So we can start to work on the various stuff there. I like to have some variation there, so we can set the variation later, and we can add, for example, a little bit of speed variation maybe later. So let's say that we have maybe 2 to have more speed. We have a little bit of turbulence too, and I like to start having some stuff. The first thing we need is to have a lower scale to start see some quality about the simulation. Maybe we can lower down a little bit this one. Okay, and we have to start tuning some parameters. So let's see for the moment just with a basic value, and here with a little bit less iteration. So let's see. Okay, we start to have some frames, so we can go back, let's see, maybe there. Okay, the simulation now is still really poor, but we can just start playing. Let's say use GPU, and inside the rendering we can say that the ambient color is black and we have shadows. So I like to start having some light, so let's go for a target direct, and I will create. We can also scale the FumeFX because you see the explosion is not so big. So target direct, and we'll have a light going in this direction. Then we can move it. Let's go for a shaded view. We have the shadows, and we have ray traced shadows. Let's go to have just shadows for I don't like to have shadows for these particles there, so let's go to include just FumeFX and ground. Okay, and then let's go to say to the particles that are not renderable, but before we have to change the lighting. Let's go for the bigger hotspot, and let's go in the overshoot. In the shadows parameters we have to say atmosphere shadows, so we can calculate the atmosphere shadows for PFlow for FumeFX, sorry. Okay, back there, and the illumination, actually we have the sliding, and we have obviously this shadows calculation, and we'll have some different coloring. So let's say that maybe there we have the gray, there we have a darker gray, there we have something like with a little bit more variation, and there this one is darker, and again there we have a darker color but with more saturation, and again there a darker color too, maybe there a clear color, and there a more saturated color. So you see we are trying to simulate in a better way the coloring. Let's remove to be faster the preview there, or maybe let's go back to the GPU and let's say to use the shadows. Okay, so you see we have the shadows there, and let's add maybe another light, but before let's save, and the other light will be maybe another light with let's say a different coloring. So we go for something like that, and will be maybe 0.35 with the shadows. Let's go back to this one, and we have the shadows. Okay, nice. Let's go again in FumeFX, and let's say that we are using also the other light. So let's try to render just one frame, just to see what we are doing. Okay, that's the rough preview. I like to have the particles not renderable, so let's go to select the particles, and first of all I like also to generate the cache. So inside the particles there, let's say that we have no update and we have the cache. Okay, let's stop and say obviously I was not thinking that we have also other particles, so we can't cache. Okay, that's not a problem. Let's go back to the particles just to have the particles not renderable. So we rendered the frames 66, so let's go at frame 66, and there we say to the particles that are not renderable. Let's render again, and as you can see we have the right illumination there. So first thing we have to do, we can scale this one to have a better quality, and it can be also a little bit lower, and we can have a lower scale there. I like to have more smoke, so actually we have 1, we can set to 2, and the simulation we can start to have 150 there and 6 there to have a better quality. Let's simulate some frames, but I like to add also the ground plane as an object obstacle, and we need that we have a speed multiplier when it collides on the ground, so we'll have maybe 4, and let's try to simulate some frames. Just to let you know, you have to remember before you launch the simulation to go back inside the particle flow and set again this one visible, because the mesher needs this one to create the mesh, so FumeFX needs the same to create the simulation. So I will launch the simulation as we done before. Okay, we have some frames. Let's go to see again, for example, there, and we can go inside the particles, and we say not renderable, and again render the frame. Okay, and that's the actual result. Okay, I like to play a little bit with the illumination. So we know that this one is the main light. Let's start setting this one to off. This one is the main. Let's see what happened. Okay, let's illuminate maybe from the other side. So let's say that the main illumination is there. Maybe the second one is on the other side. Let's see what we have. Okay, that's nice, interesting. And let's go in the particles, in the FumeFX. If we like to have a more present smoke, we can just go, for example, there and say that the opacity is 8. If we go to render, you see that the smoke is really dense. Obviously now the quality is poor. So let's go for 3 maybe. Okay. And then let's go there. Let's remove this color. Let's go for a gray color also there. This one too is a darker color. And this one is darker too. Let's go to C. Okay, nice. Then the other light is set to on. Okay, nice. Let's say that this one has no illumination over the ground, so inside the inclusion we have just FumeFX, so it will be used just for FumeFX. Okay, you see, so we have the main lighting there, and we have just this shadows there. Then we can go inside again the FumeFX and add a little bit of multiple scattering. Let's say we have no strength for this one. Let's say for the moment 0.5 to see if it is too much. Obviously, let's go for 0.15. Okay, and it is going better. Let's say 0.05. Okay, nicer. It is nicer. Let's select this one and we go for a little bit more coloring, so you see it is nicer. And let's go to change also a little bit the ambient color. So inside the render, the ambient is no more so dark, so we go for something like that, but dark. Let's see, it is nicer, as you can see. Okay, nice. So now I like to add some more detail. And to add detail, but before I like also to say how the smoke is moving. So let's save and let's go for the simulation layer there. And inside the simulation, we say that we like to have a little bit less or more, it depends on what you are trying to do, conditioning to have less or more dissipation. So let's start to play first of all with the scaling. So let's write there system scale 0.1. So in this case we are scaling all the system scale for the setup to 0.1, so 10%. In this way we are trying to achieve more details over the simulation. Then we can, for example, speed up a little bit the time scale, and we can start having, for example, a little bit more vorticity. And in this case we can start to see how it is looking. And I like to have also, for the moment, not so much dissipation. So let's see if we have something that can be nice to change in the object there. And maybe I like to change a little bit the speed. Let's say that we have maybe 6 times the speed of the object, and let's say that we have maybe 2 centimeters of speed actually as an extra speed in all direction. Let's simulate some frames. Okay, let's see the frame we have until there. Okay, let's go to select the PFlow and we have to set to non-renderable. Nice. Back again to the PFlow. Okay, until the frame we have, for example this one. Let's go to render. Okay, and you see that actually that's the result we have. So we have to tune obviously all the stuff. First of all, I think that the speed actually is too much there, so it is better to go back maybe to 3, and let's say that there maybe we have 0.5, and let's go for a little bit less density there. Let's go for 2, and again let's see the result. Okay, that's a little bit nicer, and let's see if we have a little bit less threshold. Okay, you see that we have more density, and I like to go inside the seam and set 1.5, sorry, 1.5, and let's start adding a little bit of turbulence too. Let's try with maybe 1.05. And talking about the scaling, let's see, we can try with maybe 20, and we go to have more detail, and let's say maybe 6 frame. Okay, we can have, let's go to move this one to the center of this particle, and you know we can scale it because it needs less detail. It can be a little bit lower, and it can be less about the length. Okay, back there and try to simulate some more frames to see how it is going. Okay, that's the actual result. I like to play a little bit with the scaling of the particles to tune up the simulation. So let's go at full screen, and there let's remove this one. Let's select the particle flow, and we get to scale there the particles, let's say maybe to 15%. Back in the FumeFX, and we can go for 1 for the smoke, and with a little bit less scaling we can try again. You see now that's the result, and it's better than the previous one. I like to tune a little bit the FumeFX, so we can go back to have less density there, and we can have lower value for the threshold again, and you see maybe just a little bit. Okay, let's see with less opacity. Okay, I like to have obviously more particles, and I like also to have a little bit different value there, because actually we have, let's see, when it starts to explode, it is something like that. So if we add more stuff, and we can have also for example a little bit of growing up, let's say that we have a little bit of energy to have the smoke going down, and I like to have a little bit of diffusion, and maybe a little bit faster dissipation. There we can go down with the tail, and we can have a little bit more turbulence. Okay, we can go down with the quality and the resolution, and in the particle we try to have different spawning there. So we say that we like to have, for example, 5 spawning with 30% of variation, and there we'll have 10 spawning, so we'll have more particles going all around. Nice. Let's see in the viewport what we have. Okay, you see that the explosions are a little bit more complex. Okay, back there, and let's try to simulate. In this case, if we go to render, we have this kind of effects, and if we go to see the first event, you see the render is really fast, and that's what we are achieving. Then the particles are dissolving, so we can decide to have less dissolving, just tweaking a little bit the simulation value there. So again, there we can have 10. Maybe it is better than before, and I like to have a little bit of more speed in all direction to see an higher expansion. The first test, let's try to use a really high value to see how it is looking, and then we can tune up. Let's have back the particles and save, and again simulation.